The developer's paying $30,000 an acre for every square inch of that property, whether it's undevelopable, developable, whatever it is. And you continue to limit the amount of houses that can go on that property, it drives up the land cost per lot, the lot cost per house, and the finished house price. The flip side of that is we're also increasing sprawl. If we don't put density and higher density closer into employment centers, transportation that can handle it, infrastructure, sewer, schools, that development will go somewhere. If 27 people a day are moving here, they are going to live somewhere. So they will go further out to find affordability. And if we keep pushing density down, and I'm not even talking about increasing density, we're pushing back on density with open space, with stream buffers. Those houses have to go somewhere. And if we don't allow higher density development in areas where it should be developed, and I think we can define what that should look like, they will go somewhere. They will go to Inman and Woodruff and Seneca and Greenwood and a lot of other places that increase sprawl. So my concern, although the intent of this is good and we do want to preserve open space, it's actually creating unintended consequences of getting exactly what we all do not want.
One thing I do want to point out, Taylor
Say your name.
Miles,
Yeah.
Greenville Home Builders Association. I think what would help a lot of people in our market is, and I'm going to backtrack just a second, is the term meaningful open space and meaningful developments. If we can get clarification on what that term truly means, because I think there's a lot of interpretation differences on what meaningful is to you versus to me versus to that landowner.
Sure.
I've got some specific things as we go through, but Jeff Randolph, TRG Communities. I probably will push back on some of the things that have said. You know, the comment that there are properties that are being developed that have stream buffer, streams, wetlands, whatever, but there are properties that are pastures that you may have 90%, 100% developable property. You can still develop that by clustering your houses, and we can save. So I agree with you that there are bunches of properties that have wetlands, 20%, slopes, whatever. But there's a lot that aren't. And if we don't allow, and I look at the cluster ordinance and I use the word flexibility. I am not a developer who is trying to get more density using cluster ordinance. I want to use flexibility so that I can reduce the amount of storm runoff, reduce road lengths, widths, because if I can, instead of building 1,000 feet of road, I build 800 feet of road, I have now reduced stormwater by 20%. I'm not an engineer, but I can do that math, all right? And so by doing cluster, I'm trying to get flexibility. And I would say in all of this, I'm probably one of the guys who developed under the first cluster ordinance. And I wanted flexibility, not more density. And I think that with all the additional language that's been put in the cluster ordinance over the last number of years, it's gotten more complicated. Like, I wouldn't try to define what meaningful means. I just get rid of the word meaningful. We just want open space, all right? There's down in here it says all open space got to be 75 feet. Where'd that come from? I mean, I can do a lot of stuff in less than 75 feet, you know? But I don't want everyone to think that we're just trying to get more density. I do believe we need more density. We need to get as much as we can under that ordinance.
So, Joe again with Mark III Properties. I guess my general question is, what is it that council or commission is looking to fix with the current open space ordinance? Because a lot of the things we've heard, are seem to be political and just what is the nature, what is the, if we could boil it down to one or two things, what is it we're trying to fix? Because we've got 15% preserved in option one and 30% in the other. What's broken about those two? I mean, obviously, what Paul said, I echo his comments. You know, you do everything by the rules, you bring it, and it gets turned down. And one of the things we've heard is meaningful open space. That's something we've heard in planning commission meetings, and a reason one got turned down. Well, that's not currently in the ordinance, so that's not really a viable reason to turn it down. And that's one of the big hubbubs over 3.1 is that too much ambiguity, right? And that's why it died. So what is it we're trying to fix? Because if we know the problem, then we can fix it, right?
I can't speak for council. Ms. Phillips wants to speak for planning commission.
Just told to keep my mouth shut. I can give you some perspective on what's trying to be fixed from what I understand as a planning commissioner, as a resident. The current cluster has, as you referred to, meaningful open space. There are causes in it that have less subjectivity, and we need to define those things so the planning commission and you developers that come know exactly what to expect. So you don't get to the final hour and crash and burn and have to come back. There's disagreement among commissioners sometimes on where a cluster should go. Is it infill? Is it okay? Those things really need to be defined. We do want to promote clusters for all the reasons that Mr. Randolph just stated and you know, Sherry stated, because it is a good option. But we don't want to see higher density and clusters used without their unique concept just to increase density in an area. So I think this is an opportunity to step back, look at this cluster, and really make it, you know, a shining star for everybody in South Carolina and throughout the country to look and say, hey, they're doing it right now.
I don't think so. I'm Coleman Schaus, Schaus Development. And my basic question is why don't we fix what is on the record now, since we know what needs fixing, as opposed to creating a brand new ordinance that essentially sets density for single family at 1 unit per acre. However you figure it, you're going to have an acre for a house if this is not changed. And I've been developing here since the 80s, and we've had some form of cluster for all those years. For those of you that know West Georgia Road, Morning Mist was an early iteration of cluster where we were allowed to swap square feet to reduce some lot sizes, which allowed a better use of the property. Boxwood, same thing. The lots are smaller, there's open space. What you don't want is if you have density that creates more open space, it's not all in somebody's backyard. You can make the open space more functional. And this I don't know who wrote this, but I suspect they were looking at a billboard that said, "Stop growth," as they penned this, because we can't afford this. The community can't afford this. The people that want jobs here can't afford this. But this just won't work. And we can fix what's on the record now just by taking out the uncertainty, the reasonableness, the judgment calls. That's what we ought to be working on, in my humble opinion. Do you want more?
No, save it for me. I would invite those of you who would like to take that challenge to actually take the ordinance that currently exists, not the draft document, the one that currently exists, and do that. Like, make some suggestions on how that could be changed, because maybe, there's some stuff there, maybe there's some stuff, in this document that they can use as they're mulling over what the final product ends up being. So if you'd like to do that, please, by all means, do that. Send it to us, and we'll make sure that it gets to Planning Commission. Who's next?
I might ramble here for a second because I got a few thoughts, but I think
Say
to
your
go
name.
back, Charlie Gregerson Whiteside. I think to go back to what Jonelle was saying, and I think that the density conversation. I think as I'm an engineer, I was a developer, I've done it all. So from all sides of it, I don't think anybody's chasing more density in the idea that I've got 100 acres, I can do X lots on it. I'm not trying to do more lots than I was already able to do with a conservative or just a typical R10 zoning. I'm trying to take that and cluster it down to the same number of lots I could get conventionally, but cluster it so that we're decreasing limits of disturbance, we're decreasing infrastructure costs. Because if you do an R10 conventional versus an R10 cluster, the R10 conventional is going to add $20,000 of cost per lot to develop, which then turns into $50,000, $75,000 more on the house cost, and then you're pushing out anybody's affordability. Then we're also talking about sprawl. So I mean, the idea and the goal of at least the engineers and the developers from the cluster ordinance is to condense the impact and cost from the development so that the end user, one, I mean, it's a business, we got to make money and pencil house costs, and two, to decrease the cost for the home buyer at the end of the day, because like everybody else said, this is just going to prevent sprawl if we do conventional zoning, or if the cluster that's being proposed like this is 70% open space. I mean, one, you're just murdering land costs, and landowners aren't going to be able to sell their land. Two, the wetlands, floodplains on a property now just become worthless that the people are still having to buy the land for. So now that's just become worthless, and you got to argue that with landowners. No one's going to buy anything. No deal's ever going to happen now. And the idea is that if we do the cluster, we can pull that away from the wetlands and floodplains and still have those preserved while clustering everything small into the pocket of the site that works and makes sense. And then you're still getting the same density that you would from a conventional. It's just you're shrinking the footprint of that density. So I think the density conversation is it a density we're looking at in terms of smaller lots, but still the same number of lots? Because I see density as lots per acre on a site. So I just think we need to look at that conversation, because I think there's confusion as no one's trying to get more lots than they could already get with the conventional zoning by using cluster. They're just trying to make it a more affordable product that makes sense, that engineers can do in a cost-effective way, that works for everybody, that gets the same end goal. Because I don't think anybody wants to sprawl. I don't think Greenville County wants to shoot stuff down, so they're now having home buyers buy in Spartanburg, paying taxes in Spartanburg, but still coming to Greenville, and Greenville gets no benefit. I mean, I could ramble, but I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Michael Holsey, Meritage Homes. He touched on a lot of the stuff I was going to say, but when you were talking about looking at the ordinance and kind of penning that up, I think maybe on record what the council wants out of this, I think Clay was talking about. You guys did I think a $180,000 open space study recently. Let's look at that and let's kind of decide what do we want to do with this ordinance and kind of go from there. And once we have a definition, we can kind of write a report to accomplish those goals, because everything he just touched on, is affected.
one more thing, and I haven't tried to make a plan with this draft right now, but I don't even think I could. Like, I don't think I can make a plan that would work without, I mean, you might get 5 houses on 50 acres. Like, I don't, it just doesn't work.
We did commission a plan using this ordinance. We used R15 zoning, and which allows 2.9 per acre. After it was all said and done, with a plan with 15, no more than 15 in a pod and the 70%, we ended up with 0.9 houses per acre. 0.9, not 2.9. So this doesn't work. Nobody's going to use it. We're going to all be doing conventional, and it's every lot's going to cost more, like everybody in here has been saying.
So if we were to take your challenge and take the existing cluster ordinance and redline it, when do you need that back?
Before the 11th, so that it can be shared with Planning Commission and Council.
All right.
So I just wanted to, Joe again with Mark III Properties, I just wanted to echo what they were saying. I took the actual layout, and I know I don't want to pick this apart. I certainly am not trying to embarrass anyone, and I might embarrass myself, but I took this layout that's in the ordinance, and I brought it into CAD, and I scaled up what would be a 50-foot right-of-way and did the calculations, and this site came out to roughly 63 acres. And once I didn't even get to the 20% slopes, and I didn't get to, because there's no detention shown on here, I didn't get to any detention areas which cannot be counted in open space. But even without those things, I came away with negative 1 point and change acres that you could put houses on. So with this layout, when you take out the right of way, you take out the perimeter buffers, you take out just everything involved, you could not put a lot, not one single lot on this site. So I would volunteer my personal time at any point. If you guys have a layout, you have a site, I'm just a landscape architect, I'm not an engineer, but I'm sure I can talk Paul into skipping a college football Saturday to do some layouts, and I would volunteer to help. Let me draft something up to show you what you could get, because like Eric said, Mr. Hedrick, you either can build it or you can't, and this, I'm afraid, you just can't build.
I did the same thing that Joe did. So if you take this site that was illustrated in the ordinance, and if you got 63 acres roughly, right off the bat, a little over 44 acres has to be designated as open space. You add in your 20-foot perimeter buffer, you add in your riparian buffer for the stream that's running through the site, then you take out the existing pond that's shown on site as well. Unless I'm missing something, you have negative acreage. I don't even see how you put one single lot on this site. So, and I mean, I think that's a pretty good illustration of, if you take the wording from the ordinance and you actually apply it to paper, that's something visually people can see. It's easy for people to see. A lot of this terminology is probably hard to comprehend without seeing a picture. And I mean, the illustration in the plan or in the ordinance, I don't see how you could put any lots on there when you just do the math and take out all the open space, the buffers, the road right-of-way, the existing pond. There's no acreage left over to put a lot on. So,
Well, I think to your point, I think it would be helpful if any of the engineers in the room are willing to attempt to do it, not with that particular area, but just attempt to take, a piece of property and do that with, whatever appropriate zoning. I mean, you've done like tons of different clusters, so try to apply it so that we can just see, like you said, visually what that looks like.
hey, can I add to that real quick, just real quick? Getting back to what Mr. Shaw said, we've had an ordinance in place since I started doing work in Greenville County in the early years with Pat Weld, and I guess she was instrumental in creating this cluster ordinance and everything. Are there some items in the existing cluster ordinance that can be cleaned up? Yes, there is. But it really comes down, in my opinion, it comes down to density, a better defined open space as far as what counts, what can't count. There's too much gray area there now. A prime example of that is I personally believe that some people view open space for a community that it needs to be a flat grassed area where kids can go out and kick the soccer ball or throw a football. That was not the original intent of that cluster ordinance when it was developed. It was developed to preserve, if there's existing vegetation on it, keep that vegetation, keep those trees, keep that buffer. Helps out with stormwater runoff, helps out with a lot of other things that a lot of people in here, I think, have concerns about. Does the density stuff need to be tweaked? Probably. But these are easier fixes and a much easier task to take what is in place now, take those 3 or 4 items out of there, have workshops to discuss that where everybody can agree on something, and then you stick with what's already in place. There doesn't need to be a mass overhaul change to the existing cluster ordinance. The intent is there, but can we make that better? Yeah, I think we can with some simple 2 or 3 item, 4 item changes.
Michael Holsey, Meritage Homes. We were just talking, so even the sidewalk requirements and everything, and the amenity doesn't count, and Mr. Driggers pointed out affordability, and I was just curious if, when you guys are drafting this, are you guys bringing somebody who is an advocate for affordability into the conversation? We're developers, we're builders, we're about profit. It is a bit of a race to the bottom for us, so we end up being some of the cheapest homes out there, but it's not our primary motive. We tend to be the most affordable, but who out there is actually the advocate for affordability? Because this is going to cost a lot. And I'll give it an example out of Pickens County. I have a property that there was a plan for 315 homes. We're down, because of their new ordinance, they went under a moratorium, came out with a new ordinance, we're down to 88 homes. We're going to be selling those for $500,000. And I don't know if we can make it pencil. It's one of the most expensive developments we're going to do. We're being forced into septic because we're being refused sewer even though it's available. So I don't know. Like that's kind of is affordability part of this conversation? I think that's a big part of it because.
Short answer is yes. Affordability has to be a part of the conversation.
Has to be.
But
is it?
I don't know who that expert voice is.
So we're under contract to do all of the work for Homes of Hope, which is, I think, the primary provider of affordable housing, single family, either attached or detached, not multifamily. This ordinance won't work for affordability. Cluster can work. We just completed 2 cluster deals, one in Taylor's and one on White Horse Road, that we use the cluster ordinance effectively. But language in here would not work for that.
A couple of quick points. The two guys sitting over here that just spoke can go back to the 1980s, 1990s, 60s. Yeah. You have people in this room that have a vested interest in the success of Greenville. It doesn't make sense for a Coleman Chouse or anyone else to run this community in the ditch by bad development, right? We can't continue to do business here. We can't live here if we do that. You can look at these guys and some other people in the room and look at track record of innovation in housing and land development, projects that were done 10, 20, 30 years ago that we can't do now. So I'm trying to wrap my brain around, like, if we could do it back then, why can't we do it now? Good quality, infill development, higher density. To say you have to have a 5-acre site to do an open space, I can tell you as a land broker, there are thousands of parcels, 5 acres or less, that are in infill locations that have sewer, have good roads, walkable to schools, walkable to employment centers. We can't develop those on these kind of regulations. It doesn't make sense to go on a 5 or 10 acre infill parcel that's surrounded by R12 residential and do an open space subdivision. What's wrong with houses backing up to houses? Why do we need 20 and 25 foot buffers between people's backyards? Where is this coming from? Like, I don't understand, like, what are we trying to fix? Let us help you fix it. But when a political entity is driving this forward, they're responding to political pressure. We get that, we understand that, but we are creating so many unintended consequences by trying to put a Band-Aid on this. And we need to redefine density, we need to redefine infill, and we don't need to figure this out. Go to Virginia Beach, go to Durham, go to the bedroom communities around Atlanta that had this problem 10, 20, 30 years ago, and see how they fixed it. There's good examples out there. Last point, lot size does not determine value. We need to go off this mindset that if it's a big house or a small house on a small lot, that it's somehow cheaper. Go to downtown Greenville, go to downtown Charleston, go to Hartness. We got to get off this mindset that smaller is cheaper. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, I'm pretty sure, unless somebody raises their hand, I'm the only regular citizen in the room. And no, I mean, I'm not in any way associated with the real estate area or even preservation or anything else. I just live in a neighborhood. And I have seen beautiful cluster developments. I have seen high-quality cluster developments. But I have also seen a complete wreckage in a neighborhood with infill of houses, 3,000 square foot lots backing up to half-acre lots with people who have been there for 40 years. And so this is one of the outcries from people who are living there and have lived there, their dream home for all these years, and now suddenly there's a house, 3-story house behind them, and they're all packed together in a line. And so the problem with the current ordinance is that it allows that. It does. The people come in who aren't even from here, and they take advantage of some of the things, as you all pointed out, that are too loose in the ordinance and that are not well defined. Even the definitions of all the things that we've talked about: open space, developable, undevelopable. We're doing an overlay in our area mainly because of the creek. We have a big creek. And these definitions, I just went to all the different ordinances and found different definitions for all of those things. And so it's not consistent. I completely agree with you, but I do believe you need to have some citizens in the room too, because that is a part of the movement. So.
Thank you for representing citizens.
Sherry Barrett with Upstate Forever. I would invite some of the developers in the room to do an analysis, or even staff to do this analysis of how much undeveloped land is identified as suburban or suburban neighborhood in the future land use map and is in a district where clusters would be allowed under this ordinance. Just curious how much land we're even talking about that would be available, and within that, you know, how much would be able to meet the requirements of, you know, 5 acre minimum. So I'm curious about that. Also, in Heisha's suggestion to go through the draft, the current ordinance, and recommend changes, I started doing that, and I'm a little bit confused by the approach of a completely new ordinance in the land management regulations without, and I know there is a zoning ordinance that's in planning and development, but that these things aren't, you know, kind of being addressed in together, because my understanding is, you know, density's the issue. I mean, the zoning ordinance, it makes much more sense to address density concerns. And my understanding is also that the land development regulations are really to provide the developer with the technical submittal requirements, like what has to be on the plat and things like that. So I'm confused by the approach, and I really think that the zoning ordinance needs to be in this conversation at the same time.
Thank you, Sherry.
I wanted to touch on that because I actually looked at this recently. I actually have the future land use plan and the zoning map printed in my backpack downstairs. I wish I had it with me, but there isn't a lot of land left, honestly. So, and Paul and some of the engineers could probably answer this better, and planning staff. Most of the stuff will have to be rezoned regardless. So if I use a program called Land Vision, I can filter by current zoning and pull out the large tracts. 5 acres with this, I mean, you can't do anything, we just address that. So if we're talking, typically we don't look at anything less than about 30 acres. We're doing a lot of assemblages now, and so putting properties together. So in order for us to even go after a subdivision using this ordinance or any ordinance that comes out, we're going to have to, I assume, rezone to one of these zoning requirements, the R15 or R7.5, whatever it is, and then apply this open space, or cluster development. So there isn't much, and if you look at the future land use, there isn't much. I mean, there's just not that much land left. However, talking about the comprehensive plan, it does call for, you know, I think I did the calculations, like 88,000 homes over the next 20 years. I don't know how we're building that, if this is kind of the path we're moving forward. I don't know if we want that. I don't know, you know, I feel like there's some anti-townhomes and some anti-multifamily language, and I would call it exclusionary zoning sentiment also. So I think that's the other thing. Are we going back? Are we just going to scrap the comprehensive plan? Are we going to scrap, you know, what we've seen for what we want out of our community for the next 20 years? It feels like that's the path this is going down. So I just think that, again, has to be part of the conversation, is back to affordability, back to how many homes do we actually want to build here? Are we stopping development in its tracks? And I'll go back to that study that was done, that was presented the other night. I stayed after to chat with planning a little bit, and some of the planning commission just said, give me something I can use. How can I stop development? And it's like, we're not being earnest about this. We're not being honest. So you can't say that in a public setting, you know. I don't know if you guys recorded that, but the woman who put that report together, I went up and apologized to her afterwards, because she's obviously passionate about her work, and she's got torn apart in front of everybody. So it needs to be a little more of a holistic approach, and I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but to answer your question, there's not much land out there to accomplish this. It feels like this is to stop development, period. And that's it. So everyone talks about smart development, but then we can't really have a conversation about smart development if we're designing something that allows 0 lots on 63 acres. That's not smart. That's just stopping growth.
Elonda Sherman. I'm here today on Greater Greenville Association Realtors, but I happen to be able to speak from the building side as well as from the real estate side. Just had a project to be denied after it met all of the requirements for clustering. And this was before the moratorium was put in place, but they had met with staff and got the yes and all this and went to Planning Commission and then shot it down. This is an infill piece of property in an old neighborhood over off of White Horse Road that needs affordable, we don't even know what affordable is anymore. Let's just be true about that. Attainable housing for those that are on a different scale. And it would answer all the questions over there. It would be a solution. However, there can't seem to be an equal playing field from the property owner to council or commission who, out of their own, and I'm going to say it, out of their own opinion and their own feelings about development and growth, denied it. And so my question to the young lady here was, where is council? Where are the commissioners? I think we have one that came into the room, but I believe that for them to understand what they put on paper that makes absolutely no sense, that is really killing the industry, that is really hurting the average person. I mean, even a property owner, somebody that took stake in the owning land here, that wants to do something to better the place for those that live here and want to be a homeowner. We talk about the American dream of home ownership. We're canceling it with this kind of work. And so I think that they should be in the room with us, and maybe I've missed that at some point, but these conversations for an education from both sides to be able to talk, to be able to understand definitions of wording, because obviously they don't understand it. They don't understand what they put on paper, because you have engineers in here who have taken the time to draw it out to say, it's negative. What in the world? That is a waste of time. This is a waste of ink and a waste of paper. And I just think it's wrong. And I think at the end of the day, there's a domino, a ripple effect that's playing out, that once we make decisions like this, that the average person, our children, our children's children, are going to be challenged. They're already challenged. Our inventory is challenged here in Greenville to meet that number. It used to be back in the day, we could talk about first-time homeowner, what, $60,000, $70,000. Now you're talking $300,000. Where are they getting the money? They can't even come up with their down payment. They are challenged with regulations from everywhere. And then we as builders can't even build a product to put out there because of all the things that this would carve out, what the land use is for, what the infrastructure is going to cost us, and who's going to eat it. It goes to the end user. So I just think there's a come to Jesus meeting that needs to happen.
I will say that just as a result of this conversation, it's evident that more conversations are needed. And I know that I'll have some conversations with both Planning Commission and Council about having some maybe small group sessions where we can have some targeted discussions and get down to the nitty gritty of, okay, what do we really need to, what is our goal and what do we really need to address? And I have no problem with facilitating that, making sure that that happens. But this is what we have needed. We needed the conversations to start so that everyone can understand what the challenges are, and then, how do we get there? Whatever that is. This first draft, this was a draft, and this may, get passed, this may get scrapped. I don't know where it's gonna go, but I do know that all the people, such as yourselves, definitely should have the opportunity to provide further input, and let's really peel back the layers of the onions and get down to the nitty gritty so that we can create something that actually works for all parties.
Sorry, Clay. I come from the world where I just call balls and strikes. So if it walks, it talks, it is. I'm going to be honest here. This is modern day redlining. That's what we're talking about. If every single one of us came in and said, we're going to drop another Hartness on the ground, we'd get through with no problem. Just don't want poor people. That's what it is. That's what it is. Let's be honest with ourselves. How many more squad cars am I going to see that serve the Greenville County and the municipalities within Greenville County coming up from Lawrence County? How many of those officers are we going to look in the face and be honest with them and say, you know what, I know I cut you your paycheck, but you just don't make enough to live in a community that you serve? I got a problem with that. I got a problem with that. So what are we going to do here today and going forward to be honest with ourselves about the discussion that we're actually having? What about the nurses? What about the teachers? Are those the people that we want here? Absolutely, of course. We want everybody. This is a growing town. I'm proud of it. We just need to be honest with ourselves here. Are we trying to keep people out because they don't make enough money? Do you have to make a certain amount of money to embrace the American dream? You make enough money to go sit in a squad car and risk your life every single day, or go through the trauma of an ER nurse, but you just don't make enough to live here. Let's be honest. We need to be honest. That's all I'm asking for.
And I'll piggyback on that. I think we all want to do better. I think we can do better. To his point, we collectively, as a county, as a state, do a great job of creating a place where people want to come and live. Your tax money goes to economic development to bring jobs here. Those same elected officials are doing everything they can to not provide housing for those jobs. So there's a disconnect here. We're bringing people in actively, willingly with our tax money, but on the flip side, we bring up an ordinance that is designed to stop growth, to limit growth. So which one is it? If you're not growing, you're dying. And you may not see it now or 5 or 10 or 20 years later, but if we can't provide housing, affordable or attainable housing, the jobs will stop coming. The economic opportunity will stop coming. The cultural, social, all those benefits will stop coming here because employers can't find housing for their people. So you may see it 20 years from now, but we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We spend the money to bring it here, and then we spend the money to stop it, i.e. $180,000 of our taxpayer money for an open space research that was basically thrown in the trash. I have a problem with that. As a taxpayer, 33 years in Greenville County. I'm in the business of providing housing and commercial development in our city, in our town. But I don't understand why we're bringing growth here and then we're saying in this ordinance we don't want it. These are right concerns over traffic and trees and stormwater and open space, but it's being misguided. If I had to build 40 houses off of East North Street versus south of 418, I'm going to put them on East North Street because I got roads, I got sewer, I got infill development, I got less traffic, closer to schools, closer. This is what we're doing when we don't allow something like a cluster ordinance. We just push the housing further and further out, and we get what we don't want.
Just to confirm, if we take the existing land management ordinance and redline it, probably also need to redline that portion of the zoning ordinance that deals with open space option. They don't say cluster, they just say open space. Take maybe 3 existing deals, older one, something new, I would say something on the affordable side and something market rate, and overlay the proposed ordinance there, show a difference. Because there are cluster deals out there, older, newer ones, that are effective, that satisfy what you're talking about. And let's put this ordinance over top of it, and we can see. So, a couple plans. Yeah, we just got to find us an engineer that'll work with us. Oh, there's one right there. We got him. Labor Day. Yeah, Labor Day.
How about set this Saturday?
Sherry Barrett again, Land Policy Director, Upstate Forever. This is just a question. I don't expect an answer, but has there been any consideration given to the fact that this could quickly drive development to sewered, unzoned areas?
Well, I think that would be sewer unzoned areas in adjacent counties.
Yeah, I think the ordinance says.
But that's why I'm saying it would drive development, that would be the option.
No, it's not even an option, it has to be so.
But I'm saying it wouldn't be a cluster development. They just drive conventional development to the unzoned sewered areas in particular.
You'd have to bring sewer there.
So for those of you who maybe are shy about speaking in front of the group and you have additional comments that you would like to make, please feel free to email those to me. We will be compiling all of these comments and sharing them with Council and Planning Commission. Please expect some further communication about maybe additional small group meetings so that we can continue to discuss the nuts and bolts of things. I did want to bring up the two tables just to see if there were any comments that people wanted to make about those tables. Yes, no, maybe? No, at the end. There at the end.
I just wanted to comment on your question. I think, it goes back to affordability. If you start pushing out to those unzoned areas, some of those areas don't have sewer, but if they did, with the acreage limitations, you're looking at $500,000 to start. I don't even know if you could sniff $500,000. I mean, we're building $300,000 townhomes in Berea. So, I mean, it's a problem. And the next 5 years in development is going to be a very interesting picture. Very, very interesting, because I'm not going to buy a townhome in Berea for $300,000. Lovely area, just don't want to pay that mortgage. You know what I mean? So it's we've reached, this is not a bubble in my opinion. This is a bubble inside a bubble. But fortunately, we have growth and we have some other things in our wheelhouse. Thank God for high interest rates or the low interest rates, because people like me that got fortunate and got a 3% interest rate, there's no way on God's green earth I'm selling that house to move somewhere else. So your inventory of resale really is impacted by that. But I wanted to make one other kind of big picture item that I have a public forum and I can say it. The problem you hear more than anything with any development is roads and traffic. It's a huge problem. And as someone who fights the good fight with DOT and tries to go out and acquire right-of-way and we build more road improvements than anybody in the room. And I would say it's probably not even close. If you drive down Reedy Fork Road by the Donaldson Center, that road is beautiful because we paid for it. From end to end, we paid for it. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. It was the raggediest thing you've ever seen in your life. God help you if you got off the edge of the road, because you probably wound up in the ditch. Now it's brand new. It's wide. It's built to a density and a thickness that almost knocked me out of my chair, but it supports the traffic at the Donaldson Center. That we do that. It's not the DOT. The county does a lot of work. But there's a big fundamental problem in South Carolina that the DOT cannot act on your behalf to go acquire right-of-way for a residential development. So we have to go out there and hope that we can get the right-of-way, because, I don't know what popular opinion is, but we want to widen the roads. We've got it in our budget. It's doubled in cost, and in some areas it's tripled in cost. You used to be able to do a road widening for $250,000. Now you can't sniff it for $500,000. That's the truth. So, if we had the right of way, these challenges become easier, but they're still challenges. So, we want to improve roadways because they improve our communities, they improve the flow, they improve traffic, they make people happy, and we go out and do these traffic studies and they say you got to do X, Y, and Z, and then the development still comes, but we weren't able to do the X or the Y or the Z. And next thing you know, it's rightfully so, the public outcry, and it's just, it becomes a, so I guess my point is that there's a bigger picture in South Carolina that's a huge problem. The SCDOT, Brandon Wilson, great people, love them. They should be a part of the conversation.
Yes. Ms. Phillips was next.
I have some recommended, but go ahead.
Just for clarification, single-family detached is permitted under this, and then zero lot line is what? Is it town? Townhome?
Need to get rid of town. In a cluster ordinance,
Oh,
R12.
Yeah.
In R12, in the zoning ordinance, R12 or R15, R10, townhomes are not allowed. It's not an acceptable use, but somehow it's slipped into cluster. And that is a way that you can cheat on density, because I can take a 60-foot lot, one house, divide it into 3 townhomes, I picked up 3. So don't kid ourselves that we're not trying to cheat and get some more density. Same amount of roads. So, but that's why it's not in the cluster ordinance, it's in the zoning ordinance. So.
I just had a recommendation that possibly the staff maybe create a central email address or page for all cluster submission information so you guys can track it a little bit easier instead of amongst. Unless you want 100 emails a day, Heisha, you already get 10 from me.
That's fair. We'll figure something
Just
out.
a suggestion.
Yeah, we'll
I
figure
also
something
wanted to state that I had just had a conversation with my oldest son last night, and he said, "Mom, I'm done looking for houses. I can't afford them." He's a welder. He makes more than I ever thought about making it at his age. And he can't afford these houses even as far out as Pickens County. So I get it. Our house is paid for, and thank God, because I don't know how we'd pay for it if it wasn't. But we were fortunate. So, like $60,000 was about an average price not so long ago. So I understand it, and we don't want to drive the cost of housing up, but houses are already expensive. We have to expect a level of quality to maintain the quality of life for the people that live here, for the people that are going to move here, and for our grandchildren and future generations. So 20 years from now, 30 years from now, they don't look back and say, "Boy, I don't know what they did, but they screwed this up." And there's no way to fix it. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we go forward.
Thank you, Janelle. I just want to thank everybody for coming out and being honest and sharing your thoughts. And this is not the end. This is the beginning. So stay tuned. We'll be communicating with you about further meetings and further discussions. Oh, Mr. McGee.
Just want to thank everybody for coming. It's very important. A disclaimer, I did not pen this. I know it's just to give you a heads up, but I did also encouraged many people to write me, and you know how many people wrote me about this? Goose egg. I asked for inputs to change this. Nobody wrote me. So my email is cmcgahey@greenvillecounty.com. .org, excuse me. It's But no, I appreciate. We want these comments. And you're right. There is political pressure, right? There's no doubt. But I'm saying from a politician's standpoint, and I never thought I'd heard myself say this, is, that I'm a politician, but it's I have to look at things from a macro level too, right? So I have to look at things from constituents who've been here. Who here is from Greenville? Like, lived here their whole life. That's a lot, right? And you are stakeholders here, right? But, I've only been here 9 years, going on 10 years. And I've seen it change where I live in Five Forks to get here. It used to take me 20 minutes. It takes me almost 45 minutes to an hour to get here now. It's crazy.
So those are things when I'm out knocking doors and running for elections, people are talking to me that live here, and I got to take in those things, but I have to look at the picture too. Is we do need housing. If we're not growing, we're dying. I get it. I'm not stupid, but we have to get all that in together. And honestly, the old ordinance. Remember, this isn't the new ordinance. We still have the old ordinance. It's just a moratorium, right? So we still have it. It's there. We can correct it and bring it back. No one says we have to use this new document. No one said that. Rick has got some input from people, and that's where this came from different stakeholders. I don't know everybody's name. I know some of them, but I'm willing to take some from you guys and make this work. And like I said, I appreciate you all being here, and just we will work together. And I know we've talked to Isha is getting some small groups together, some developers, some planners, some real estate people, all that in, and look at the macro situation that we have to deal with, and let it get smaller from there. But all the concerns you voiced are great, and from the citizens to the builders to developers, everybody. So we'll work. I'm willing to work with you. Contact me. If I ask for it all the time, and really what I get is a lot of people complaining, residents. I don't get many from the developers and builders, but I'm willing to have those conversations, and I've met with 4 developers so far. So bring it on. I'm ready to meet with you and ready to make this right. And we're not, and here's another thing is, remember, we're not going to get everything we want. We have to be able to compromise. You might not, get everything you want, but be willing to go to get 80% and be happy with that for everybody, because, the other side wants their 80% too. But again, thank you, and please keep being engaged, please. I appreciate y'all coming.
I appreciate the input. I didn't hear anything today that we can't work towards getting and fixing. As this is a draft, this is the very beginning. And I look forward to working with each one to resolve all these differences.